What's up? What's up? I'm Dr. Omatma, host of Egg Meets Sperm, where we're busting fertility myths, sharing tangible tips for your fertility journey, and bringing you the most knowledgeable guests to support your journey to parenthood. This podcast is for both women and men because getting fertile as fuck is for both partners, don't you think? Remember, just listening to this podcast won't get you pregnant, but following the tips we share just may. Let's get you fertile AF so that you can co-create the family you dream of. And if your partner's not listening to this, make sure to share this episode with your partner. Hello and welcome to Egg Meets Sperm. My guest today is a very different type of guest for us. And we are going to be hearing a little bit about Jon and Laura and their journey through infertility, through what brought them onto this journey, as well as how they've been handling it and what's been happening on their path. What's unique about this guest is that Jon is really coming from the male perspective on the journey to parenthood, the journey to creating the family of your dreams. I try not to use the word infertility because I think that it's such a label that doesn't mean a lot. Because obviously, infertility is a diagnosis, but you have a child. So, hi, Jon. Welcome. First of all, welcome. I would love to hear from you. What has been going on? How did you end up in the world of fertility so deep, it seems like? And what has it been like for you?
Well, geez, you've probably heard it a million times. It's been a roller coaster for me. So 5 years ago, before I met Laura, I'd made this tiny little package up for myself that said I wasn't having kids. And the reason why I reached that conclusion was in 2011, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And that sort of knocks you back a bit. But at the time, I wasn't thinking of children. I wasn't thinking of fertility issues. I wasn't thinking about much at all. I was just working and enjoying myself. And it was a reality check. And even going through that cancer treatment, I still wasn't thinking of fertility. And even at the time, the doctors didn't bring it up with me because it really wasn't part of my life situation. So I made this tiny little package up that said I couldn't have kids. And that gave me the certainty that, okay, now I can move forward and that's fine. So fast forward a little bit, I meet Laura and all she did on my first date, well, all I did was I say, I can't have kids. And all she asked was, well, is that really true? And I guess that sent me into a bit of a tailspin because I hadn't heard that I was infertile. We hadn't really broached the subject, but I'd assumed that the doctors had told me that I can't have kids. But knowing now what I know, they probably said, hey, Jon, you're going to have to look at other ways to have kids. So fast forward to now, and here we are with a baby and having gone through this infertility journey. So I met Laura. Laura asked whether it was true, and I didn't have hard facts saying that I was one or the other. So I set off down this path and found myself a doctor and had some analysis done with my sperm and, well, or lack thereof, I should say, because there was nothing going on in any of my analysis. I would like to say I was surprised, but having gone through my life, it was sort of like, oh, really? It was like confirmation for me. And then I actually did this without telling Laura initially because we'd literally just met. And here we are talking about this huge looming cloud or this huge looming thing, which is infertility.
Mm-hmm.
I told her I would have been a month or two into our connection, whatever you want to call it. And then we basically decided to start heading down this road together and working on either's part, but with the support of each other. And I can tell you, as I went into this world, it's quite a lonely world when you look at it from a man's perspective. I couldn't find anything that really offered any substance for my path, for my emotional support. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of people out there who are quite bitter and it's hard. It's a hard journey, who are quite bitter and they're using it as treatment for their challenges that they've experienced. So I guess Laura and I talked about it. I can still remember the conversation where we sort of go, should we maybe share? And like, we didn't know what to do. I can still remember the conversation. We're both looking at each other, looking for one to go, no, let's not do this. But no, we thought it's probably a place that we could offer a good perspective, a healthy perspective in a really tough topic.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been blessed with a baby girl. And 5 years ago, I didn't think I was having any. I thought I was going to take everyone else's children and I'll just give them back at the end of the day.
So I have a question, because a lot of men decide that maybe they don't want children. I feel like that's a cancer or not. That can be a decision that people come to. And I'm curious what changed for you.
I think for me, the possibility. So we saw the doctor, there was no sperm. So for me, we went, right, what's next? And that's always been a part of our whole journey. It's all about what's next. We didn't want to sit in this space too long or in the pain too long. Mm-hmm. So my next piece to the puzzle was the fine needle aspiration. It's a relatively unpleasant procedure, but nothing compared to what women go through normally. And in that procedure, we had 3 passes. So they put the needle in once, nothing, twice, nothing. And on the 3rd pass, now this is a procedure that's blind. So I don't know where they're putting the needle. It's literally like a needle in a haystack.
Right.
And
like, let's just stick a needle somewhere and hope that there's sperm there.
That's exactly right. I still remember the doctor going after 2 passes and there was nothing. And he looked at me and he goes, hey, John, do you want to do one more pass of the needle? And I looked at Laura and she looked at me and we both just, wrong wording, but it can't hurt. And then the doctor sort of went, oh, he goes, I couldn't do this. And I'm like,
wait, so were you awake for this?
Yes.
Okay. And like local numbing or no numb?
They put some local in, yes.
Okay. I mean, still painful nonetheless.
It was just a strange, odd feeling.
Right.
And in that 3rd pass, they found 1 sperm. And for me, that was like winning the lottery. Like I hadn't had any inkling of that being the case, that there was anything going on there. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a big change in mindset for me, in possibility of what could actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
And following that, we moved from our doctor as well. So it's not who you hire, it's who you fire. And we basically got rid of our first doctor. And we were very, very fortunate in the fact we found basically 2 of the best doctors in Australia, in the world. And one happens to do a microTESE procedure, which wasn't here 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. For those who are listening in, what is a microTESE procedure?
MicroTESE procedure, it's sort of the last step in a man's process to see if there is pockets of sperm being produced within the testes. The actual procedure lasts anywhere from 4 to 5 hours sometimes. Mm-hmm. And the doctors, they're highly skilled under a microscope, and they go in and they actually extract tubules or areas from the testes and they remove sperm. And there's actually embryologists in the lab as well, or in the surgery, and they take whatever they have off to another microscope, and then they have a look and see the viability of the sperm. So, it's meant to be a one-only procedure, but my doctor found a pocket which had enough sperm for the eggs we had, and I woke up very groggy from that procedure, getting told they found sperm, and he said, we can do it again. And I'm like, whoa, what? My mind was just blown.
And they wanted to do it again so that they could get more sperm the second time. Okay.
Which actually meant, so we'd decided we're going to collect eggs. But Laura doesn't really have fertility issues, though she didn't respond well to the medications to increase the number of eggs produced, which is why it took so many the first time to get our eggs, in the hope that we actually found some sperm. So we found enough sperm for the eggs, but as soon as Laura heard we could do the microTESE again, she realised she had to do more egg retrievals.
the egg retrievals also are not fun. How many? I think I read somewhere you've been through like 15 rounds of IVF.
15. The biggest thing with our journey is because it was male factor and because of my cancer, and there were so many factors that made us skip parts of my assessment type process.
Mhm.
So for some men, they'd end up doing biopsies, they'd end up doing other small procedures to see if there's sperm before they actually get to the microTESE procedure. But for me, we did the fine needle, which showed there was sperm there, one. Then we sort of went straight to the microTESE for our actual particular journey.
Wow. What a journey it has been. So I'm curious, has this journey been over the last 2 years, or like how long has it been that you've been on this path?
Laura and I, we met when we were a little older. It was the end of 2017. So I vividly remember us having conversations within a couple of months of, because it took us a couple of months to actually organize our first date, really, because we were flying and moving places. But yeah, it was a conversation that came up on our first date about children. Laura's got a big family. She's extremely maternal. And I can say that at that time, I kind of had this inkling in the back of my head. I'm like, I've kind of sort of got to show my hands here because I'm very sure this woman wants a family.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So, what have you been learning in terms of? We were talking a little bit before we started. What was it like to have the male factor infertility, which actually, I mean, your case is quite extreme, but male factor fertility is like 42% of the equation, 49%. I can't remember the exact number, but it's pretty high. And yet, at least in the US, what I find is that men are often not being tested till much further along in the journey. There's this energetic, well, it's not me because I got someone pregnant in high school. And and it's like, well, this is 20 years later and things are changing. So I'm curious what it's been like for you to be in the driver's seat, to be taking charge of the journey. And I'm curious if you have insights or things that you can share with people that are also similarly struggling or may not even know that it's partly their equation. I'm curious what you would have to say about that.
Yeah, I end up having conversations, and Laura does the same with many different random people about this topic, especially since we shared, and I do see it work with people. And I happen to see you on Instagram, whatever. Oh, do you mind? And then off we go down this road, having a chat. And I do find a lot more men are talking about it. Being a man attempting to drive this, I kid myself that I'm driving this, but Laura and I work together quite well. So for us moving forward, we made sure we had these baby making meetups. I'm not sure whether you heard it. We sort of coined the phrase that we would get together and we would have these times which we've scheduled aside. And I don't know about the guys out there. Well, I do. I know how it felt for me. It can be all consuming, infertility. And when we started it, it was literally, we talked about it twice a day. We talked about it from morning till night and then from night until morning. It was literally all day, every day. And for me, I found that quite pressuring. I found it quite triggering. God knows how Laura felt with it, but that was her way of actually dealing with it. But I wasn't dealing with the amount of words that were coming at me, and it was just a lot. So we came up with the idea about these baby making meetups, and we would schedule in some time, and we'd probably look at a few of the questions we wanted to pose, or some of the procedures we've got coming up, or some of the things we've got going on. And we would literally get into the infertility bubble and we'd talk about everything that needed to be talked about. We'd come to conclusions, we'd deal with problems, we'd deal with challenges. And then once that was done, all right, what are we doing with the rest of the day? And it's not easy. I can tell you that. It's not easy at all because you do find yourself slipping into conversations about that topic again and again because obviously there's going to be lifestyle, there's going to be medications. There's going to be medicine. Oh, I didn't do this. Oh, but you did do, and you find yourself slipping back in. But we would catch ourselves. We go, right, we've got our next meeting at whatever time. And that was a huge savior for us, I believe, because it stopped us completely ruminating on a subject that can just take over your whole life, especially following doctor's appointments, taking medicines, eating the right stuff, making sure you're not eating. It can go on and on.
Yeah, really putting on a schedule like this is our time to talk about it and we're going to contain it in that space. Yeah.
Yes. They would actually take their own path sometimes because we'd start with a certain intention and then we're off dealing with this and maybe it's something I said or it's something she said that made me feel a certain way. And we go, oh, well, let's deal with that. And then we're moving on, then we're off down another road. But it was really cathartic for us to just express ourselves during that time. And then you'd leave little action steps as well as you leave. Like before the next one, you're having this appointment, I need your help with making sure I take my medicines, or I need your help with getting up on time for the injection. All these sorts of topics brought up.
Mm-hmm. That sounds really, in a way, like beautiful because it's sort of like couples that work together. They can talk about work all day long and then they forget about their relationship and everything underneath. It has the ability to take over, and oftentimes it does. And the downside of it is you lose the partnership and the relationship and the intimacy that you once had with your partner because of the constant conversation. So that's a really great tip for those of you that are listening. Take notes. And so, are there other things that you have found to be super helpful? I think I almost heard the conversation of who needs support with what is also, I think, really important and often not happening, especially when I feel like at least what a lot of men have described is that they feel pushed to the side on the fertility journey and it's all about the woman, that they end up just taking a back seat and not knowing how to step up and support. So what were some of the ways that you found to support each other and what did that feel like?
Yeah, we did both have the conversation that the important part about this journey is that our relationship stayed strong or became even stronger, which I believe it did during this portion of our lives. And I believe that having those conversations, the baby making meetups, the need to reflect on the times when you are in need of support too, and not making it right or wrong is the big one. And not taking anything personal was one of my biggies because whenever we had a disagreement, oh, God, where did that come from? And we'd end up coming back together and talking about what the other said made them feel. And I go, I didn't say that. Well, that's how I meant. That's how I took it. And I went, right, okay. So for me, I need to be better at delivering a message and I need to be a little better at hearing the message that's actually coming across. And that can be between the Meadow report with most females as well. They sort of speak at 150 words a minute with gusts up to 250, 350. It can be a lot.
Yes,
Well,
it can.
you have persistent thought. You have persistent thought sometimes to get the important stuff.
Yes, this is great because not taking things personal is something that I've worked on for a long time. How do you actually do that? Because I feel like everything is personal.
Yeah, it is. And take it that way. But for me, leaving the ego at the door was a big reality check for me. And it actually removed a lot of sting to a lot of conversations that we may or may not have had. And by me falling on my sword and going, hey, I don't need anything out of this conversation or this interaction other than you being okay, then I'm good. Anything you say to me in the height of infertility, she's just got medicines running through her veins. She's got injections to prepare for. She's got pain in the stomach. She's got cramps. And she's got ovaries which are like bags of marbles because they're just stretching. And I literally had to go, Jon, put all that ego aside, and you can't take anything and the way it's delivered as gospel, how it was actually intended. That was a big one for me. That was huge. If you removed ego and I didn't need anything other than I brought the calm to the situation, and I could actually get through that, she could feel supported. And I can't tell you the amount of times where I just sit there and go, no, there's absolutely no need in saying that. And this is in my own head. There's no need further down that road. That is purely self-serving. And it is definitely not going to serve this conversation if I say a certain thing or whatever. That reality check and that reflection has really, really helped me and helped us, I believe, as we move through.
Beautiful. Any advice or suggestions you have for couples that are maybe just starting on this path and really like specifically directed to the men, but it can be general too?
Yeah, I think when you're in infertility, if you don't expect anything from the people you're talking to, and I'm talking about family, friends, acquaintances, strangers, if you don't expect them or you expect them to say something stupid most of the time, then you can't be disappointed because a lot of people do not understand infertility. And Laura and I talked about this a lot because if anything was said like, oh, you guys should just go on holiday and you'll get pregnant. And for us, it was just an impossibility.
Right.
If that actually happened, I'd be going, hey, Laura, we probably need to have a chat.
Right. Like, do I need to know about something?
We looked at a way of the mindsets around infertility, and we've called it the 7 mindsets of infertility. So when you're actually talking to someone or you're actually conversing with someone about their particular journey, there's no point in talking to someone about adopting when they're at mindset 1 and they're thinking they can conceive naturally. There's absolutely no point. And for that person, they're not ready to talk about adopting. So someone goes, oh, my friend in IVF, yeah, but if you've still got the idea that you're going to conceive naturally or with you and your partner without any assistance, then there's no point and you can't take on the information. And a lot of people are well-intended, but they end up causing, and if it can be taken wrongly, if that's even the best word for the moment, it can be taken badly and it can cause a lot of angst. So I think for couples joining the infertility world, there's the mindsets of infertility, and we found that there's 7 of them. And wherever you're at in that journey, you've got to make sure that you can actually tie a little knot. In, let's say, level 1 is believing you can conceive naturally. You need to be able to tie a piece in that. You go, right, we're going to need help now, which means you'll progress to 2 and so on through the different levels of, let's say, surrogacy, adoption, IVF, even using sperm and someone else's egg or using someone's egg and someone else's sperm. So we find being very sure about where you're at and then planning is essential for a healthy road or a healthy path through the roughest terrain you may ever see.
Yeah. Amazing. This has been so enlightening and so wonderful. I know that you have a book coming out soon.
Oh, yes. It'll be in the next 6 or 8 weeks. I kind of feel
very soon.
That publishers, and they do something called typesetting, and it's going to be exciting. We're really excited about seeing it, but we're really, really daunted about the prospect of actually really being real. Like we're out now, but it's like really being out and about in a book. But we should be doing all the pre-sale and getting that out there and getting the name out there. And infertilityman.com, you can just drop your details and we'll keep you informed about when that book will be ready. And it's an exciting time to spread this word and support those people doing it tough.
Yeah, thank you for being out and sharing your journey and really creating the space for other people, other couples and men to come to this conversation with a little bit more awareness, a little bit more insight into the process. So thank you so much for what you're doing and for your willingness to just be sharing your story publicly. I'm sure that's not easy.
Yeah.
But you're doing amazing things with that.
I appreciate you saying that. I think for the main message is be proactive. No matter how old or how young you are, the male part of the assessment, the process, is actually the easiest part of this process. And God willing, you get the tick of approval and then you move ahead. But semen analysis, get your hormones, have a look at your lifestyle habits. And I think, like you said, 42%, it's men. 42% of the challenge of infertility. But if we can leave our ego aside, we can go and be proactive, I think we'll end up with a lot of good results.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your amazing wisdom and your stories.
Thank you.
We will put your link to your website in the show notes. I know that you have a download, the IVF milestone cards. Do you want to share for a moment what that is?
Well, during our journey, we saw some cards that people were using during their photo ops. So they're props based for your journey. That's like stone cards are. So that's actually a digital download. So you can pretty much get them and they're in your computer before you know it.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's
so
fun.
like IVF day or collection day or IVF got this, IVF have got this. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I can't wait for your book.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. Was that an amazing episode or what? Make sure to check our show notes so that you can link up with our guests. And if you're not a part of our secret Fertile AF community, you can join for free via the link in our show notes. Last but not least, have you showed us some love lately? It would mean the world to us if you could share and review our podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm. Peace.